When we went through the House Judiciary trial in July of this year, where all the four CEOs of the big tech were present, what the conventional wisdom stated was that Apple CEO Tim Cook had gotten off easy. He was joined by Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, Sundar Pichai of Google, and Jeff Bezos of Amazon, and each of the other three had a lot more to worry about. Considering the gloomy concerns over Google's extreme data collection, Facebook's terrifying history of election interference, and Amazon's bullying of its business owners. But now, the time had changed all of a sudden. It is Apple on the forefront now, with Epic's dramatic attack on Apple on their App Store policy. It is a gaming industry giant versus a tech corporate giant now, a battle that is ongoing in the courts. Epic Games decided to pick a fight with Apple and Google on Thursday, August 13 of this year. The Fortnite maker pulled a bold stunt that quickly snowballed into a game, leading to getting removed from both the Apple App Store and Google's Play Store, all of which, it turned out, was part of Epic's plan. On Thursday morning, Epic introduced a new way to pay for V-Bucks, the in-game currency in Fortnite. Players on Android and iOS now had the option to buy V-Bucks via Epic Direct Payment, a route that offered them a 20% discount. If they instead decided to buy the currency through the Play Store or App Store, they would have to continue paying the higher regular price. Why the discount? Google and Apple each take a 30% cut of purchases made within app in the Play Store and App Store respectively. With direct payments, Epic can pass on some savings to the customer. But the thing is, Epic Games stunt was a flagrant violation of the guidelines for the App Store and Play Store. Both Apple and Google require that payment for in-app digital content, example Fortnite V-Bucks, be processed via their store's respective internal billing systems. Apple's rules are even more stringent, forbidding developers from as much as mentioning external payment options. Epic knew exactly what it was doing. The direct payment feature was a deliberate attempt to circumvent Google's and Apple's long-standing developer guidelines. The two tech giants could not let that stand, so both companies removed Fortnite from their marketplaces. And now Epic hit back with prepared lawsuits, suing the two companies for anti-competitive practices. Apple recently came under fire for another thing that happened, this time against Microsoft, where it disallowed Microsoft to publish its xCloud app on App Store. Apple's App Store pitch is that it has real, live humans personally review each app for safety and quality, giving users a single trusted place to get all their apps. Apple wants to approve these games individually and let users rate them individually through the App Store. The guidelines Apple site flatly ban showing store-like interfaces on a remote computer and thin clients for cloud-based apps, which Stadia and xCloud both run afoul of. I think many people are looking at iOS as an open platform like Android is, and that is why many people, including Epic, are trying to force Apple on opening iOS, which is just ludicrous. Even when both do things extremely similar and have really similar features, both are treated really different by its parent company. Google, since it bought Android, they saw it as a product they could make money on by selling licenses and allowing other OEMs to modify and change it to suit their needs. This meant they needed to open up the operating system and make Android a place where Google makes a ton of money. Meanwhile, iOS, since its conception, was meant to work with the iPhone for the iPhone. This means iOS is and always has been a closed platform, where Apple does not make money selling iOS licenses nor allows anyone to tinker with the operating system. That is a key factor many people are missing from their arguments. It is not necessarily that iOS is a monopoly by itself, where anyone cannot touch it because Apple is pushing competition away or crushing the competition within iOS. It is because iOS isn't an open operating system and they shouldn't be obliged to open it nor be forced into allowing others to. If we look at the game retailer cuts in the market right now, every major platform from Steam and Microsoft Store to PlayStation Store and Amazon take 30% as their cut. So, if 30% is the industry standard right now, why is Apple getting the brunt of this attack? This brings up the major console versus computer question up. The iOS App Store was introduced in 2008. Back then, smartphones did much less than today. Just like Nintendo Switch is a gaming console, an iPhone was also seen as a mobile console, purposefully built to be a smartphone and nothing else. With a personal computer, you owned the garden. With an iPhone, you just got the window and a view. Apple got to decide what runs on it via policing the App Store and never advertised otherwise. The big question that props up in front of us is whether this was unfair back then. And if not, What changed that made it unfair? Now, in 2020, an iPhone is more like a personal computer, a device that is viewed by many as general purpose. Not multi, but general. Not like a gaming console can do things beside gaming, like Steam videos, but still being fairly controlled. But for everything today,
there's an app for that.
the rules, however, never really change. From a hardware standpoint, there is no reason a Nintendo Switch cannot run other stuff. One can, despite perhaps the absurdity, even theoretically, argue that a Switch is even more restricted with more arbitrary limits. So this perks up a few more questions in our mind now. So, what should an iPhone be? A general purpose device or a multi purpose one? And would the average Joe know or care about this and expect different things out of the device if branded in a different way? Because one thing makes this pretty apparent: the market share in no way makes Apple a monopoly. Worldwide, it has less than 25% of the market share and has heavy competition from Android manufacturers in both price and features. To run the App Store, there are quite a few intricate backend services that Apple needs to run. That, of course, is a cost that they need to bear. This includes the cost of hosting each of these apps, which they provide for free for the apps that are free on the store, payment processing in every country it serves in products in, manual app reviews, which cost a ton of human labor, marketing in the App Store, especially with the manual curation they go through daily, and finally, the cost of maintaining the developer resources and framework. Now, the question here is whether these services entail enough value for a 30% cut, and does it make sense for the smaller as well as large developers? And if not the developers, who should bear the burden of paying this cut? Also, what should matter more when considering the rules? What the app is intending to be or what the app technically is. For example, is xCloud an app that is an app catalog which basically is disallowed, or an app that streams videos which happens to be pixels and sound from a video game session? The biggest solution that is running around out there is the breaking down of App Store and allowing third-party apps as well as side loading of applications on iOS the same way as it is done in Android. My concern with this proposal is what happens if the majority of apps just start disappearing from the App Store, and instead now you have to track down each individual app you used to have from their own website now. Is that really a net gain for the consumer? Then when you say you will ban developers signing pirated apps, would you ban apps that exist simply to collect credit card information and sell it? Would you ban apps that offer a minimal benefit like YouTube with no ads but sell your phone number to scammers? Does this erode the consumer's belief that iPhone is a trusted device? You and I well know to expect these sorts of things with installing random software off the internet. But I would wager the average iPhone user would not. We have seen time and time again security issues from people installing random APKs on Android. The disclaimer did not stop them. I see this argument a lot, and as a technical person, I am sympathetic. But as I understand Apple's position, the App Store is a feature of iOS. In other words, the curation and payment processing is not for the developer, it is for the iOS customer. Apple wants to make the device owner feel they will not be scammed by other payment processing or have their data stolen by apps, allowing side loading, no matter how secure or with how many warnings, undermines the user confidence in the security of the device. It is clear that Apple believes this to be a huge part of the value of iOS devices and is prepared to resist these sorts of changes very, very strongly. If Apple allowed side loading and some vulnerable old person believes the friendly person who calls them up about some great deal and side loads an app to their iPhone and has their bank account emptied, what will be the headline? Foolish users falls for scam, ignores repeated warnings and loses their savings, or iPhone hacked 83-year-old loses life savings. As for the argument about the third-party app stores, well, some of the app stores among them would definitely not give a crap to your privacy. Like on Android, we have the MI Store, Huawei Store and others with no regard to user privacy. Apple has not treated developers that well with the rules that prevent developers from talking about alternative payment methods. And with the seemingly arbitrary enforcement of the rules, Apple should compete and make users or developers choose their system over others, even with a potential surcharge because they offer enough value. Forcing developers to use it is not sustainable. Apple did not consider what industries have a margin big enough. Games like Fortnite have close to zero marginal cost. The same cannot be said for multimedia content providers. In my opinion, Apple should definitely be allowed to take a cut, given it is not much higher than breaking even. This is just what doing business is like. Though not allowing all call to action seems unreasonable, no buttons or in-app web views are reasonable for me. There should be a clear distinction when you use Apple's payment system or the apps. Apple, of course, should be allowed to not make side loading abilities obvious to find. I do not think the gain is great enough when compared to the risk to put a switch in the UI to turn on side loading. App Store and sandboxing etc. take away the fear of people to acquire software online. Side loading undoes that to a degree. App Store's antitrust allegations is, in my honest opinion, a complicated debate with more than one point of view. I'm kind of tired of black and white comments that proclaim that Apple is in the right or wrong without considering all the nuances. The most likely option that I think is going to happen, app developers get to present payment options to customers but have to include Apple Pay as a trustworthy option. This would be like the sign in with Apple concept, the privacy focused option. Now, let us wait for the verdict to come ahead and see how the court plays it out. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Nerdgasm. Let me know down in the comment below if there is something else you would like to chime in onto the discussion. Please do like and subscribe if you are enjoying this content and want more to come your way.